Say something.
Hi.
All right. Episode 26 of the Closed Book Podcast. I'm with my grandmother,
My mom,
a.k.a.
B.T. Thomas,
Say your full first name.
Dr. Barbara Thomas,
Dr. Author.
author of several books.
Name two.
From the Heart of a Blessed Temple and My Tears Are a Prayer.
All right. Am I in one of those books?
Yes, you are. When I talk about the family, you're my can man, C.A.N. Christian Anderson Nettles.
All right. Most of them knew my full name. Well, my first and last, but they probably didn't know my middle name. Now when they see me, they were like, "Oh, Anderson, Anderson." So this is my grandma, Barbara Thomas, Dr. Author, grandmother, loving, nurturing. She's also the woman that she helped raise my mom. And I just want to because y'all see the title already, before we get into our discussion, who is Dr. Barbara Thomas? Where does she come from?
I am from Philadelphia, better known as Philly, but I raised my daughter in Newark, Delaware.
Newark, Delaware. When were you born? Let's get that. When were you born?
I was born in the 40s. I'm not going to tell you exactly when. Late 40s.
Late 40s. So because you grew up in Philly, that's the north, right?
Yes.
And did you visit the South a lot at all?
No, not much, because my grandparents had all passed except for my grandmother, and my parents, they weren't too particular about what they had seen and learned growing up in the South.
So how was during those times, during the 40s, when you grew up in the 50s mainly, how was racism then? Was it as bad as the South, or was it like a little bit easier to get around?
I think it was harder in the South. It was more, I want to say, devious. There was a lot of more undercover things like the KKK and things like that. But also, growing up in Philadelphia, like you said, in the 50s, it was still somewhat, you were told to stay in your place. If you're white, you're right. If you're black, get back.
So I know you were born after the whole Emmett Till situation, right? You were born after or before? I think after, like a couple years, like 3 years after, right? Because that happened like in 1944, I think. So how like when you heard about the Emmett Till situation, how did you react?
I didn't learn about it. We didn't learn much black history or things that were going on growing up in the North. But as an adult, when I heard the story, it really bothered my spirit.
You grew up with a lot of siblings. Let's go down the list of all your siblings. And if you don't mind, let's see, just let us know if they're like deceased or they're still alive.
Okay.
Well, list them in order.
My father called us his Magnificent Seven. My mother and father had 7 children. The oldest was my sister Mary, now deceased. My brother Lawrence, he lives in Texas. And then myself, I'm the third of 7. And then fourth would have been my brother Tommy. He just deceased recently. My sister Penny, who deceased about 2 years ago. My sister Brenda, who deceased a while ago. And there's still left the youngest also, my sister Kathy. She still lives in Philadelphia.
Out of the 7, 3 or 2 passed away, right? 3?
3 are left.
3 are left, so 4 passed away.
Yes.
And you being the middle child, like how does that make you feel watching your siblings pass away?
It was hard. Actually, being number 3, we were kind of split up. It was the big kids, which were the 4 older ones, and then the little kids, which were the 3 younger ones. And I never thought that I would outlive some of my younger siblings, but that's just the way it happened. And it's just It's just weird sometimes just thinking about growing up in the projects, growing up in a large family, but I thank God for the history that we had as the Washington family.
Would you mind speaking on the death of your parents? I know your father happened when you were like a teenager, right? Or like you were like in your because mommy was born right when he or how old? I don't think mommy was born.
No, I don't think so. I was already married, I believe. I was married like at 19. So I believe I was already married when my father died. He died of a heart attack, and he had had several. He had had a stroke, but he was a strong man, strong in faith. And so, we miss him a lot. And then my mom died in '07. I had just moved from Delaware to South Carolina, and I tried to get her to move with me. And because of her history and things she had heard and seen when she lived in the South, I believe she was from Tennessee and my father was from Mississippi. She never wanted to live in the South again. So she always said, you can always come back home to Philly and visit me, live with me, whatever you want. But she was my rock when it came to prayer and to going through a lot of challenges that I went through in life.
All right. So you were married at 19, Papa Ronnie,
Yes,
who died in 1988.
yes.
Mother was 16 years old. And he's one of the grandfathers that he's the only one that I never met. I came like 16 years later, I think. Ronald came 5 years. I think Morgan came like 8 years after, or 9 years after he passed. How when Papa Ronnie passed away, what do you remember your initial reaction? Do you remember what was going through your mind at the time?
At the time, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. And like you said, your mother was 16. And I think the hardest thing was telling her because her and her father were so close. So my pastors at the time, Gary and Faye Whetstone at Victory in Delaware, they came with me to the house, and it was around Christmas time. I remember the Christmas tree still being up. He died in January. And for them to tell her, it made it easier, but we went through a lot of grief separately and together, but it gave us a different bond.
How do you think we would have reacted or interacted with Papa Ron if he was still alive?
Oh my gosh. He loved kids. He loved being a daddy. We had so many spiritual, we used to call them our godchildren, girls and boys, and we always wanted 2 or 3 children. We only had the one, and he would have been so happy and so proud to have so many grandchildren.
All right, so speaking of grandchildren, you have 3, right? You have 3.
Yes.
Me, Ronald, Morgan. How was it like when you was, because Ronald was the first one? How is your reaction? Like, what is your thought process to being a grandmother for those 3 times?
It is so, each one of them is so different, but they're all loving. They all have something special about them. When I pray for them, I pray for all of their futures. Ronald is someone who has great potential that he hasn't realized yet. Morgan is walking in what my mother prophesied when she was a little girl. She was always very confident that she would either be a doctor or a lawyer. And today she is a doctor. And then my number 3, he has potential to do all kinds of great things in business and in communications. And that's why I call him my can man. And the scripture that comes to me when I think of him is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ. And he's living up to that potential today.
Thank you. So that was a long backstory, but we're going to get to society versus back then versus now. And I always wanted to ask you, would you like, because you was born in the 40s and you grew up like through pretty much a lot of eras and decades. And so, what's a huge difference that you see in my generation now versus your generation then?
I think the biggest difference is respect. There's a lot being said by your generation among themselves. I need respect. You disrespected me, and all that kind of thing. But our respect was for the adults, for our parents, our grandparents, for any adults, and it wasn't just say thank you or show your appreciation. It just became something that we did automatically. And looking back now, it's a shame because the young people today, they miss out on so much by not being appreciative, by not being respectful. So it's a big difference. It's been coming, it seems like, for a while, but now it's like in your face, disrespect. And hopefully, eventually the young people will get back to it, but it takes parents and grandparents to enforce it, as well as for the young people themselves to want to do better.
You speak a lot on respect, and social media back then wasn't available to you guys, and so when you look on the internet now, like Facebook, Instagram, you see that disrespect was popular. And it gets the most views and clicks and stuff like that. Pretty much all the nonsense. Like, how do you think people back then would react to that?
Well, it's sad because people back then would have never thought it would get to the place where it is. I remember when I was graduating high school, I was an academic, and to tell you a little bit more about how old I am, I went to the counselor's office looking for money to go to college. My parents couldn't afford it. And my counselor came in and she asked me what was I looking for. I was looking through a catalog. And I said, I'm looking for money to go to college. And she said, where do you live? And I said, Raymond Rosen Projects. And she said to me, black kids from the projects do not go to college. And I was devastated because I knew we couldn't afford it financially, but it was a desire of my heart. So, and we were taught, if you're white, you're right. If you're black, get back. So, even respecting all adults does not necessarily mean that adults are right, but we had to show respect. And I realized even when they're wrong, it's better to walk away.
Right. Why do you think it's so hard for people now to walk away?
I think because people are more vocal. Young people are allowed to say whatever they want to say, get away with whatever they want to say, and they learn younger from the internet, from different venues, television, from the street, from their peers, that they can say whatever they want to say and get away with it. Whereas, we got plucked in the mouth, or we got told children should be seen and not heard. Those kind of things were definitely reinforced in the family and in the home, and it's not that way anymore.
When you say like television, social media, do you think, because our phone nowadays is a very powerful tool. So when, like, say you lose a fight or something, right nowadays, you lose a fight, you got like 10 people recording you, posting it on all the pages and stuff. And then do you think that's a huge reason why people feel like, especially around my age, or feel like they're more obligated to use like guns and stuff like that?
I think because there's a lot of insecurity among themselves. They put anything and everything out on the internet thinking, well, I have so many views and I have so many friends, and it's not real. I mean, you're not communicating with those people one-on-one, face-to-face. So they feel as though on the internet or those kind of things that they can say whatever they want to say. And they don't realize that everything you say has a consequence.
Would you say the internet is like a drug, like it's like an addiction?
Oh, yes, it's definitely addictive. I mean, I don't do a lot, maybe Facebook and, send a text message every now and then, but it's like, everybody, if you don't have a phone in your hand, then what's going on? And when I look around and I see children 6, 7, 8 years old with a phone. It's like the communication is not as clean and as pure as it would have been with an adult being there to make sure that you're saying or hearing things that are proper for your age group.
How do you think? All right, let's say y'all had phones like cell phones like that we have back when you grew up. How do you think y'all would have been back then?
Let me tell you, I think it would have been so different because when I was growing up, we had rotary phones. At one point, they had party lines where more than one person could pick up, and hear your phone conversation. But also, your parents were there. The phone was attached to the wall or sitting on a desk so other people could hear what you were saying. So you were more cautious about what you said, and you also understood that what you were saying could be heard by other people and could be misinterpreted.
So let's talk about violence, right? You grew up, and what you saw on TV, the news, a lot of protests where things turn violent, police officers spraying people with water hose, getting dogs. You hear about lynchings and stuff like that, which those things still happen to this day. But how do you feel about black on black crimes? Like, what do you think about that?
Okay, well, first of all, when you say violence, my father was an avid Cowboys and Indian watcher. And he always felt as though, he would say, shoot them, get them, bang, bang. It was entertainment. And now it's not entertainment. It's a part of society, sad to say, that has increased more and more all the time. And I still to today wonder where all these young people are getting guns and getting all kinds of things to kill one another. And they don't understand that death is final. It's just a matter of you disrespected me or you said something I didn't like, or, you talked to my girl or my boy the way I didn't want you to. So they shoot each other, and they don't understand that that person is gone. Your life is gone. And that family, all families that have anything to do with it are impacted. So a lot of it is the thoughtlessness of your actions, that there are consequences to every action, and a lot of the actions of young people today are needless and also negative.
Do you blame that more so on like our environments or the music, or both?
Oh, definitely both, but the music is one of the greatest detractor from saying and doing the right thing. A lot of times, I'll say to young people, listen to the words of a song, not just the beat or it sounds good or who the person is. And people don't understand. I've been reading up a lot on some of the so-called stars of today. A lot of them have issues. They've grown up with issues. So, they rap and they sing and they dance. They do a lot of negative things because they're hurting themselves. But young people think that that's a good thing, to emulate these people, and you don't know their story, so you don't know why they do the things they do, and they think it's about the money. Money is a detractor from doing the right thing.
Like when I go through, because I got vinyl records and stuff, and I go through like all like the catalogs of music that I have, and I can see it. I can see like a huge difference in the beats, the lyrics. Do you think, how powerful do you think musical artists are now? Like back then, do you think they're as powerful as they were then, or are they more powerful now?
I think it's a matter of timing, but if you say powerful, I would say more powerful now. But back then it was, all about, being my friend, my boyfriend, my girlfriend. It was definitely clean compared to the stuff that goes on today. And, when I look at it, we would say, my boyfriend's back, or Soldier Boy, something like that. Whereas now, little kids 2 and 3 years old are dancing to music that's sexual and suggestive, and they don't even know what they're listening to, but then they're dancing to it and trying to emulate what they see older young people do.
I remember when I worked. Remember I used to work at the summer camp. I think I told you this. And then we used to like have ice cream every time the kids would clock out and stuff like that. And the ice cream man or woman, they was playing. They know the song. It was by Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, WAP. They was playing that, and it was like a sexual song while the kids were getting ice cream. And my eyes was open, like, wow, y'all really playing this around kids 13, 10, 5 years old. So I definitely agree with all that you said. My opinion, like growing up in it, it's like different because like back then, my generation, we looked at it as like, well, most of us, we be like, oh, that's boring, like, or lame, like the stuff that y'all were doing. It wasn't like, to y'all, it was fun, you know what I'm saying? But we think it's lame because we're used to doing all this extra stuff that we're doing now. Like the music that we listen to, the first thing that gets us is like the beats, the hard 808 type beats, the rap beats, the beats that with the loud bass. But once we get hooked onto that beat, we eventually start knowing the lyrics, and then we eventually start saying it. So how do you feel? Like, do you think music? Do you think music? Do you think some music should be banned? Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. Because as you were speaking, I was thinking a lot of the music that's out now, the rap music and some of the R&B crossover, that kind of thing, it makes you desensitized to something smooth, like they say, smooth jazz. And when rock and roll first came out, I mean, it was uplifting. It made you happy. It made you want to dance. It didn't go any further than that.
right,
And now the purpose of it is how much sexual words or connotations can I get away with. The ones that seem to be most popular are the ones that the most disgusting on the stage, as far as I'm concerned, and showing body parts and doing things that they shouldn't do in front of little children, let alone teenagers and older. And I think that it started when parents stopped taking control of their family, of their homes, and saying, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. And then everybody felt, well, if they're doing it, we're going to do it too. And doing it because everybody else is doing it will never make it right.
right. When you talk about like the woman wearing like less clothes and stuff like that, like me, I never really talked about it because I really haven't had anyone to talk to about with. So, but I have you. So, when you were growing up, how did the woman dress when you grew up?
Oh my God. I mean, as soon as you said that, I thought about the Supremes and the Temptations. They wore suits, they wore tuxedos, the women wore gowns, they wore jewelry. They dressed up to look good, to make their sound good, to make people interested in looking decent. I mean, one of the things that I thank God that you and not so much Ronald, but especially you never got into is the pants hanging down, with the underwear showing. A lot of things that people do, they do it because everybody else do it, but they don't know the history behind it. Like the sagging pants had to do with homosexual men in prison. But young guys on the street, they think it's cool because everybody else is doing it. And just because everybody else is doing it doesn't make it right. And it says something about you. It says, I'm a follower and not a leader. And we're all called to lead in some aspect of life.
I definitely agree with the sagging part. Like when I was in high school, sagging was like, that was the norm. Like sagging was cool. It was cool to have a belt on, but still be sagging at the same time. And I would just see like the teachers just let them do it because they're so used to it. And I think that I wasn't a product of my environment, which is another episode. But I was never a product of my environment. Like I was never really a follower. Like sixth grade, my first day of school, middle school, I wore like a bow tie. and I had the picture. So, do you think it was more leaders then? Because you had Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, stuff like that. Do you think it was more leaders then, or do you think more leaders now? Because we all have leaders now, but do you think they were more powerful back then in a good way?
More powerful back then, like you say, in a good way. As soon as you said that, I thought about Malcolm X. I thought about Martin Luther King. I thought about leaders. If you really think about it, who wants somebody walking around looking like a bum being in charge of anything? Whereas the men that dressed for success are the men that generally did succeed. And when you said, you wore a bow tie the first day of school, I am so proud of that. I watch a show called Young Sheldon, and he's a scientific genius. I mean, he's in college at, I think, 11 years old. But he always wanted to wear bow ties. He wears bow ties to school and meetings, and he talks to adults. So they respect him, even though he's a child, they respect him at a different level because he looks like somebody that knows what they're saying and somebody that goes somewhere. And, I've heard the phrase a lot, dress for success. You got to look it to be it. That's all a part of making things better in your life and making things better for others. As a leader, you need to set a good role example, and clothing do make a difference.
So, in conclusion, where does Barbara Thomas see herself in the next 5 years?
It's funny you said that. I've had a lot of medical challenges in the last, I'd say, 10 years or so. But I was talking to a pastor in Delaware when I was there a couple of months ago, and he wants me to go with him to Rwanda next year. And even though, slower and medical challenges and everything, I still have a desire in my heart to go because there's things I still want to learn, things I still want to share with other people. So in the next 5 years or so, I expect to be stronger. I expect to be traveling, missions and teaching. I love the nations because God so loved the world. And so, when it comes to family, I want to see all of my family succeed. I want to hear everybody is doing better, and I want everyone to give God all the glory.
Amen.
Amen. And I love my can man.
Do you have any questions for me?
Why now this interview, and where do you expect to be in 5 years?
Why now? When you're around me, we talk a lot, just about history and stuff like that. So, and now since I'm doing this more frequently and more seriously than I was a year or two ago, I thought this would be the perfect time right before 2024. And in 5 years, I'll probably be like having my own business, still doing this, or probably manager of a hotel or something like that.
Wonderful.
That's where I see myself 5 years. Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say, you don't know how much I love you. And I think we don't say it enough. And I love all my grandchildren. But I just want to say, God has blessed me so much just watching you guys grow up, becoming, and I know that there's so much more in store. And I thank God that you have your head on straight, you got a plan, you got a purpose, and all things work together for good. Whether it seems like it in the moment or not, don't stop trying. The only failure is to stop. And we are not called to stop. We are called to continue to go and to grow. God bless you.
God bless you, and God bless everyone watching. This was episode 26 of the Closed Book Podcast with my grandma, Barbara Thomas. I love you guys. I'm out. Peace.
God bless.